Okay, so have you ever been in one of those high-stakes situations, like a huge presentation, a game-winning shot, a really tough exam, and you just feel your skills completely disappear? It's that awful feeling we call choking. But what if it's not actually a failure of your skill, but a failure of how you're seeing the situation? Well, a new theory gives us an amazing mental model to understand and, more importantly, to beat this exact problem. So let's get into this one sentence from Albert Tan, who came up with this whole theory. It just completely flips the script on the problem, right? It's suggesting the issue isn't what you can do, but what you can mentally see. And that idea, that's the key to unlocking your best performance when the pressure is really on. So this is what we call the choking paradox. You've practiced a speech 100 times in front of a mirror. It's perfect. You know the material cold. But the second you step onto that stage, it feels like a totally different person shows up. Why does our brain seem to betray us at the exact moment we need it to be at its sharpest? I bet the answer is a big yes. It is the most common advice anyone gives, a coach, a teacher, maybe it's even you, telling yourself, come on, just focus. It sounds like the right thing to do. It feels like what you should be doing, but so often it just makes things worse. And here's why that advice so often backfires. It's because even though it's well-intentioned, it's based on a total misunderstanding of how our brain actually works under stress. We've got to move past this old, outdated idea and start using a much smarter model. So you can really see the shift in thinking here. On the left, you've got the old advice, just focus. It's like trying to move a mountain with your bare hands. It's all about brute force. But the new model on the right, that's all about control and skill. Instead of just trying harder, you're learning to skillfully adjust a mental lens to perfectly fit the task at hand. It's about being smart, not just strong. And here's the bottom line. When you try to force that super intense, narrow focus, you can actually set off the very stress response you're trying to avoid. You're basically starting a fight with your own biology. And let me tell you, that's a fight you're probably not going to win.
All right, so what's the alternative? Let's talk about the core idea here, your cognitive aperture. The absolute best way to picture this is to imagine your brain has a built-in camera lens, and this lens controls exactly how much information you're letting in at any given moment.
Now, your cognitive aperture isn't some physical thing in your brain you can see on an MRI scan, but it is a super powerful way to think about your attention. And just like a real camera, this mental lens can do two key things. It can zoom way in for a tight, detailed shot, or it can zoom way out for a wide, panoramic view. Mastering that switch is everything.
So this whole thing really operates in two main modes. On the left, you've got a wide aperture, which we can call scan mode. This is your big picture view. Think of a quarterback scanning the whole field for an open player. This is usually a lower stress state. Then on the right, you've got a narrow aperture or lock mode. This is for pure execution, like a basketball player at the free throw line who needs to block out everything except the hoop. That's a high-stress, high-focus state, and you absolutely need both to be at your best.
Okay, so where does it all go wrong? Well, the problem starts when we lose control of which mode we're in. And the science is pretty clear that when the pressure hits, our own biology tries to grab the steering wheel.
And the culprit has a name, adrenaline. When our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight response, goes into overdrive, it just floods our system with adrenaline. And this has a direct, immediate, and powerful impact on our cognitive aperture.
Here's how that chain reaction plays out. First, your brain flags a situation as high stress, a threat. Second, bam, your body dumps a ton of adrenaline into your system. Third, that chemical cocktail forces your brain to tunnel. It slams your mental aperture shut into an extreme narrow mode, whether you want it to or not. And finally, if that super locked-in mode isn't the right one for the job, your performance just tanks, you choke. Now, what's really fascinating here is that choking isn't just one thing. You can get stuck in that extreme narrow aperture. That's classic tunnel vision. The quarterback misses his wide-open teammate because all he sees is the defender right in his face. But you can also choke the other way. You can get stuck in a wide aperture. You're overthinking, you're distracted by the crowd, when what you desperately need to do is lock in. It's always about a mismatch between your aperture and what the moment demands. I know this might all sound a bit bleak, like we're just helpless against our own biology, but here's the good news. We're not. This is where the theory stops being a problem and starts being a practical tool. We can actually learn to manually control our mental lens.
And this is the real key. The goal isn't to get rid of stress. I mean, come on, that's impossible, right? The goal is to build the skill of managing your focus within that pressure. It's about becoming the pilot of your own attention, instead of just being a passenger getting thrown around by the turbulence. So how do you actually do this? Well, here's the protocol. It's all about consciously training yourself to toggle that mental lens back and forth. You can practice this literally anywhere. Okay, imagine you're at the free throw line. First, take a deep breath, widen out your focus, see the whole gym, hear the crowd, feel the ball. That's scan mode. Then, as you get ready to shoot, you consciously narrow all of that down until the only thing that exists in your world is the rim. That's lock mode. By practicing this shift, you build the mental muscle to control your aperture yourself, which stops that adrenaline surge from hijacking it for you.
So, at the end of the day, cognitive aperture theory gives us a whole new way to talk about and, more importantly, control our own minds. It applies to everything: sports, business, art, you name it. Your focus isn't just a switch that's on or off. It's a dynamic lens. And once you realize that you're the one behind the camera, the only question left is, where are you going to point that lens next?